Okay, everybody, so I am recording now. As always, we can't see your faces, but your voices will be recorded, but please still ask questions openly. We're gonna start today wrapping up the class just with a charcoal drawing of the same two pieces of fabric that we drew the other day in pencil. We're gonna focus on planes and value, and I kind of hope that this is going to come into play with your self-portraits. This is the last video for the quarter, the last class session, lab session, whatever you want to call it. So after this, your only responsibility is your final exam. Yesterday, the time I set aside yesterday was equal to Student Success Day. I'm actually traveling on Student Success Day, so that's why all day yesterday I made myself available to you and you had the opportunity to sign up for meetings with me. However, even that being said, I'm fully here to support you as you wrap up your final exams, and you can send me pictures and ask me questions, and even in an emergency, I will meet with you through Zoom. Okay, so don't hesitate to try to continually engage with me as you continue to work on your final exams. But this will be the last lab session that you have with me. So we're going to begin first here by creating, I'm going to use my chamois and I'm going to create my, basically my drawing space. So that I can put down that value to work into. Now, once again, as a reminder, what's nice about the chamois is that's how you clean the chamois. The more I draw with it, the more charcoal is removed and the more my chamois is, made clean. That's always been my trick. Okay. I'm drawing at a weird angle, so I might have a little distortion today, but we're basically going to do the same type of thing that we did the other day, just with charcoal. I'm going to move that back. I'm actually going to move myself around the easel. Maybe that will give me a better angle. No, then I'll be in front of y'all all the time. Rah. Let's see. Sorry, I thought I was in a good spot, but the answer is no. There you go. That's better. Good. Okay. I don't actually like to sit down to draw, but it seems to work on this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab a piece of my vine charcoal. And you can start just with your medium. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just begin. I'm going to create my boundary box around my plane of reference. I'm going to come down to where I think that bar is going to go and draw right over. And just like we did yesterday, or excuse me, on Monday, we're going to start with a quick line gesture to kind of put things where we think they need to go. Yeah, I can see automatically, boom, I'm off. So I'm going to start again. So it tells me I need to shrink down what I was attempting to do. Totally fine to make mistakes. If you take anything away from this class, I hope that the biggest thing that you take away is drawing. But if you don't take away drawing, I hope one thing that you take away is the idea that it's okay to make mistakes when you're learning. And this is all a learning process. Lots of you have tried different things out this quarter and you have made mistakes and you've even failed at a couple things, and that's been awesome. And I've fostered that environment for you. And most of you still have pretty good, strong grades. And so there, I'm just trying to reinforce to you the idea that like failure is part of learning, and it's okay to fail. And in the right environment with the right support, you can fail and still be highly successful. So I'm going to come down. I'm just doing my line drawing, right? My gesture drawing here. I'm not going to leave this. This is not my goal to finish my drawing in this way. But I'm just going to draw in my big forms. Okay. And then I can use that to help guide me as I correct and cite. Now, just like we discussed the other day, I'm going to use a paintbrush to cite my angles, just like we did the other day. Now, I see in your drawings that you've been turning in for your final exam, I see a bigger need for this. Okay, I see a bigger need for this. And don't think that the only thing you need to rely on there is, the grid. Find angles between forms, by measuring them, pull that paintbrush right up to the angle and then measuring it against your picture and check the angles. And that will help you a lot to get much more accurate proportional relationships. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to basically just measure a line that I drew, and I'm going to move it over and measure it against my photograph. So lines that are correct, I'm just going to leave. And lines that are slightly off is correct angle, but just needs to meet higher, I'm going to change. Now, last class, we also talked about the utilization of a unit of measurement. So what we do is I'm going to go through and just kind of like check some of these big angles, which is one way of measuring and citing. And then I'm going to find my unit of measurement and check through the drawing with that unit of measurement. So again, when I draw like this, I might even draw for an hour and then still find stuff that I drew wrong and I need to go in and correct. There's a sense that because we drew it, it must be right. That's really a very unfortunate way to like think about your drawings. Just because you drew it doesn't mean it's right. You don't just leave things that are wrong. And that's really important, especially in your final exam. You might be 5 hours in on the head, but if you step back and you measure the head against the body and the head is 2 times too big, well, you've either got to make the body larger or the head smaller. You can't leave it. That's a bummer sometimes. That's such a bummer sometimes. And I totally get it, but it's just the way the cookie crumbles. Unfortunately, in drawing, there is just no such thing as a soft batch uncrumbly cookie. Apparently, it's always going to be a crumbly cookie. No soft batch cookies allowed. Sorry, hit the camera. So you're going to go through and you're going to measure all these angles. And now once you've got those angles all measured, remember this is just really early stages, right? We're gonna start to find that unit of measurement. I say we use the same unit of measurement we used last time, which was the height of this versus the width of this. So let's start off there with the height versus the width. So I have 1 and a little bit. So when I look up there, it's just a little bit below 1 height into the width. So that tells me I need to bring this in a little bit because I had it a little bit too wide. And I can go back and I can measure my outside lines again to make sure they are doing the right thing. And I'm going to measure the height of the knot into the rest. And from my point of view, an angle right now, which might be slightly skewed because my laptop is a little bit below me, this is about equal to 1 and a wee little bit. Okay, so it looks pretty good. And I want to measure this into this and this. So it's about 3/4 this of our unit of measurement. Looks pretty good. And across it's about 1 1/4. 1 1/4 looks pretty good. Now, I'm going to measure the width of this space here into the height here. You're going to pick the widest spots to do that. So that's my unit of measurement. 1, the width goes in once, goes in twice.
I think the camera froze.
3 times. Okay. I'm so sorry about that. Thank you. So this width goes in once, twice, and just about 3 times into that space. So that's about right. Now, where it looks a bit funky in terms of like just the way that the contours are, that's because I need to get in here and I need to get some real contour focus drawing in, which kind of changes the ultimate shape, but doesn't change, I hope, what I just measured as the width. Yeah, because it's a bit sort of like zigzagged in there. So I can go and I can just recheck all those angles. This is coming out too far. After teaching online all this time, I hope I'm going to be able to go and stand up for 6 straight hours. Walking around the room and engaging with everyone's easels. It's going to be interesting. Okay, same thing. Width from here to here to the height. Width. To the height. So in terms of its entire width, the height is a little bit smaller, so that looks pretty good. What might need to come up here are like this feathered edge where the tassels are. some shapes in there. Okay. Now, when we squint our eyes at the background, we can definitely see, of course, the background is lighter than the piece of fabric on the left, and it's darker than the piece of fabric on the right. That's because all value is relative, of course. So what we want to do is let's go ahead and establish, a background value that we think is equal to the one in the drawing. So I'm just going to, in the photograph, I'm just going to go ahead and establish a background value. And what I'm looking for is relationship. So as I'm drawing right here, for instance, I know that this is too dark. I'm going to put it in like this, a little bit darker than I need it to be. And that's okay. Because then we're going to knock it back with the chamois. Draw this side over here, left-handed. Now I'm going to knock that back with my chamois till I think it's about the right value for the photo. And this is when I'm also going to start to, lighten that contour line. We don't want that contour line to be overpowering. So I'm basically just sliding the chamois on the surface, not really pushing very much. Okay, so hopefully you have something that's getting close to this. I'm not going to need those lines. Those were my measurement lines. Okay. I'm going to switch a little bit here. I'm going to move up to a piece of, soft charcoal, medium, soft fine charcoal. And we're going to start to look at some nice big shapes here. Value. So grab your soft fine charcoal and then grab your eraser as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start to put value. And it's okay if it's darker than you need it to be right now. Just dropping in values, nice big shapes into the areas where we see planes of value, okay? Now, if you go and look at the discussion board with your peers' drawings on it for their final exam, one of the things you'll notice is, I think, when I look at them, is the students that are drawing all over with large shapes are creating more unified drawings, and they're also drawing a lot faster. there's still some of you that are drawing with like, you know, trying to draw like detailed part versus detailed part. And, you know, if a final exam is a way to gauge what a student has learned in the course, then that would tell me that that student, if they were drawing, for instance, with contour and they were drawing piece by piece, that would tell me that that student didn't know the course content. Okay. So I recognize that drawing is hard, but part of what the final exam does is it tests you on your knowledge from the course. And so if I see tons of drawings made where students aren't applying the lessons that we've covered in class, then that's not really a way for me to feel like that student has retained the information from the course. And sometimes, like I said at the very beginning of the quarter, sometimes the people that are the hardest to teach are the ones who have some experience in drawing, because they already know how to do it one way and they don't want to change up. But, you know, then the question is, then what have you learned? You know, if you take a world language and you already speak that language, then what are you going to learn? And so the hope is to always be advancing our skills and our awareness of our skills in all of the disciplines that we engage in learning. And I just kind of want you to hear that, everybody, that, you know, the final exam, you're supposed to be showing me everything you learned. And so if you're not showing me what you've learned through using the materials and the processes taught in the class, then that kind of makes me feel like, okay, well, maybe the student didn't learn that material. And again, the people that sometimes struggle the most with that are people who already feel that they have the skills they need. So there are my big shapes of value basically over here on the right side knot. And now we're going to go over and do it on the left side. And if you remember, yesterday or on Monday, we talked about tension, you know, looseness and tension in a piece of fabric. So continue to look for those places where you have visible indicators of tension versus looseness. Those are going to be folds versus smooth transitions. Is there anywhere that you see, you know, darker values? I want to start to get those in. And you can see how much I just used my finger for all this blending. I like to use my finger because I can really feel the tactile sort of like relationship between my finger and like the material and my finger and the paper. It helps me to be able to have a good strong sensibility of like how much pressure I'm putting in to my blending. And take me a long time to get to stop the practice of doing that with oil paint because I was taught to do that with oil paint. But sometimes sometimes I just need to be able to use my finger to blend something and to really feel that thing. That paint underneath my finger so I can really determine how much pressure is needed to blend that material on the canvas or on the linen. A lot of times I paint on Belgian linen. There's that hand shape showing up that we talked about the other day. So we should be starting to get a similar type of drawing that we had with the pencil, but the big difference, of course, being that it's in the charcoal. Okay. So we're not going to worry about like the wrapped twine around the rod. It looks really cool, but we're not going to get that detailed here. Get that value in there. Now we have a few different values established on the paper right now. We have the original value we put down with the chamois. And then we have, the other subsequent values that we applied as well. And that means that we have the possibility in this moment of sort of activating different values with the eraser. Now don't get confused here right now between value and color. Okay, we're looking right now at values. So with your eraser, you can start to lift out now the places where you see the brightest values. Sorry if my head's in the way. Just the brightest spots. We don't need to do everywhere. Just the areas where we have those brightest high key values. Now the other side, it's a little bit more difficult, right? Because it's like, it's that linen color. It's a beigey kind of color. And so there, we don't want to get too confused between color and value. All right, now it is a different color for sure than the piece of fabric on the right, but it's not necessarily brighter or darker in a way. So if you squint your eyes, I want you to try to isolate the brightest spots on the fabric on the left. Okay. Definitely looks like a hand, right? It's cool. Nice bright value here. Through there. Here. A little bit over there. I think I just took out too much, so I can just go through and blend out a little bit. Blendy Wendy. So then on both these pieces of fabric, we have like this, like, you know, this sort of like open threaded, I'm gonna gather it's a weave. Could be a weft, could be both, depending on which part of the fabric. So like over here, what we're gonna do is I got this like really weirdly shaped eraser that I sort of just, you know, have been working with. It's just a piece of the plastic eraser. And then like over here, what I can do is just kind of like, oh, I just lost part that was going to be helpful. I'm gonna go in and just kind of like lift off some of that charcoal. And then I have one of my painting and drawing hoodies on my lap. I'm just gonna clean the eraser on that. And I can kind of come in and lift some bright spots. And I'm not gonna try to draw every single piece of thread. What I'm looking at are the big shapes, big lights. Like that. And if you want to reinforce that, like if you're like, oh, that looks good, but it just doesn't quite look convincing enough to me, then you can go through and just bring some darker darks. But you're drawing leaves on a tree. You're drawing strands of hair. You're not going to draw everything. Just something like that. So this is, you know, this here, this is drawing, you know, Ingres would be really angry with us about that drawing, but Seurat, now Seurat's all about it. So it's not photographic Angwer with his camera lucidia drawing every strand here. It's Seurat feeling and giving us an impression. Which approach is right and which approach is wrong? Neither. You just want to figure out what you want to do in that moment. You know, I say art history's given you the chance to be loosey-goosey. Take it. Let go of the idea that you have to tell the viewer everything. In fact, sometimes I feel like Impressionism or expressive painting tells the viewer more than a photographic painting. Some hyper photographic paintings I just find incredibly lifeless. You know, they feel so empty of soul. And there's a very old standing feud between painters and photographers that photography isn't art. And it's not real. No one really believes it, but it's just something which always comes up between painters and photographers. And you know, when I see painters making photographic paintings, I'm just like, why didn't you just take a picture? I think it's all about process for those people and the ability to wow somebody and say, look, I can paint like a camera. And I just don't understand why you would. Why wouldn't you just use a camera? Here, because this area is brighter, there's some, we can give the same illusion of the tassels by adding darks. Something like that. If you wanted to, you could say, well, you know, this has got some texture too, Vaughn. Like, why would we not deal with that? Okay, well, let's deal with that. Same type of process. Marquee with the eraser. Just a few lines drawn through here. Maybe something like that. Okay, so over here we have this space in here. A little darker edge. It's going to become tassels here. When you're working on your self-portraits, you know, I was talking to one of your classmates yesterday, and he said, you know, when I'm drawing, I'm thinking about this moment, I need to think about Seurat, and this moment, I need to think about contour. And that's really what I want you to do is when you're drawing from now on, you know, use the right tool for the right moment in the right way. And I've always liked with charcoal that to me, it's a bit more about, you know, this mark, big shapes, big marks, expressiveness. Yeah, it feels very different to me. I need to stand up to draw the straight line on the left side of the paper here. It feels very different to me than pencil, which seems to speak about precision. Okay, we're just about done with the lesson. Darken this space in here. Blend it over here. Not too bright. Go in and reinforce any darks you've lost. Okay. Here we go. Questions? No? Oh, there's a question. Okay, bye, Zach. Okay, everyone, so go ahead and take a picture of your drawing and upload it to the last discussion board of the quarter.